Good afternoon. I know you're all well-fed and in a nice and warm space, so the teacher in me is going to try to keep you a little bit more engaged. I promise I won't make you stand up and do jumping jacks. But I do want to talk to you a little bit about reimagining teachers. And so your first exercise is that I'd like each of you to close your eyes. And when I say the word teacher, what comes to mind? Is it a he? Is it a she? What words describes that person? Odds are, open your eyes now, go to sleep. Odds are that person was able to make a solid connection with you. That person made you feel special in some way. Because great teachers do that, don't they? What great teachers do is they encourage you to risk and they encourage you to fail, which is super important. We don't talk a lot about failure, but that's how we build perseverance and grit and resilience, right? That we can make it forward. They encourage you to think outside of your comfort zone. They push you, right? And they get you to a place of understanding about who you are and what you're meant to do. This is my first teacher. This is my big sister. And I want to tell you a little bit about my first memory of her teaching me. I was young, never mind how young I was. It was a long time ago. But she had just learned how to read, and I wasn't even in school. And in the age before Google, telling on myself, there were these things called World Book Encyclopedias. A show of hands. Who remembers those showing up at your door? So these were housed in my room that I shared with my sister, and I can remember her. She was taller than me, so she could reach the shelf, and she would literally tumble the heavy tome to the floor and spread it open, and we would gleefully get our crayons, and she would circle the letter. And dutifully, I would repeat the sound back at much, angst if I couldn't get it until I actually was able to make words. Later, words became books. Books became school and eventually college. And I became a teacher because of her. She was my first teacher. Now, since then, I've had many, many, many teachers, people who have inspired me. But those of you with an older sibling know what I'm talking about. When your older sibling, brother or sister, says, go do this, generally you go do that, right? So when she said, I think you should go join Twitter, I said, okay, sure. Now this is several years ago. Twitter was a new little baby at that point, and it's all grown up now. But at that time it was brand new. And she was starting a brand new chat, and it was called InnoChat, and I didn't even know what a chat was and what were 140 characters. Sweet goodness, I wasn't even on Facebook. But it was about innovation and strategy, and my very first, I was jumping. Yes, I'll go do that. But I have to admit, my very first thought was, what do I need to know about innovation and strategy? I'm just a teacher, right? Well, unknown to me, I had stumbled into an ultimate and phenomenal goldmine of innovation strategists, business leaders, thought leaders in their field, people like you and people like you. And I was blown away by the conversation, this global, huge conversation that I had never before been a part of. And I began to understand things about myself and my own perception and the language that I used to inform my own profession began to shift. Because up until that time, I only saw myself as just a teacher. And just is such a diminishing word, isn't it? But how often do we think about that with teachers? How often do you hear, if you can't do anything else, go teach? We still hear that, right? So I'm here to dispel that myth. And my challenge to you before the end of this talk is that you too will reimagine your definition of a teacher. But I digress, and so I want to get back to my InnoChat story. And so Twitter's young and new, and I'm out there, and there's not many other educators out there but me, but I'm hanging onto my sister, and so I'm lurking. So in your heart, just know, I want you to just answer in here. Don't raise your hand if you've been a lurker. Just answer in here. Don't raise your hand. You know, how you passively follow along on a chat, but you're not actively engaged. So for about a year and a half, I lurked in InnoChat. And then there was a chat that came up, and it talked about your favorite book on innovation. And I had just finished reading this phenomenal book and visiting several other chats, which were now kind of prolific. So I've had conversations in several places. And then I started to talk about my favorite book and my favorite author. Now, I have to tell you, at this point in time, I did become actively engaged because there was one snarky comment from a well-known business leader who is very prominent in the nation. If I said his name, you probably know who he was. So we will not. But in less than 140 characters, essentially what he told me was, well, that book is a little bit like chicken soup for the teacher's soul. Imagine my dismay. How absolutely degrading to the teacher profession and to teachers in general that you would say such a thing. So by now, I'm entirely empowered, and I have so reimagined myself, and I answered in 140 succinct characters in a way that made him understand that that book was incredibly important. So I tell that story to say what my transformation was as I moved from just a teacher to a professional, an innovator, and in fact, an edupreneur, and which is a kind of a new phrase that marries educator and entrepreneurial, because that's what we're going to in education. That's what I believe educators need to be. And to that point, in this quest on Twitter, I began to investigate other things in my eagerness, in this epiphany of how I could self-direct my own learning. And I began to investigate things like unconferences and bar camps. And I was blown away, because how cool would it be? The best learning happens in the hallway of a conference, doesn't it? Doesn't it happen in our conversation? And here are these conferences that you can go and attend, and those are the things that are kind of occurring. You set the session at the onset, and you get to direct your own learning. No longer did I have to wait for the district office to tell me what course I need to take. I could go find it for myself. And so I did. I went out there and I started looking. And one of the things that I looked at was something called Ed Camps, which is education's version of an unconference. And I thought, oh, I so want to go to one of those. And I looked, and there's one in Boston, and sure enough, there's one in Birmingham. There's even one in Mumbai, India. But there wasn't one in Atlanta, Georgia. So my newly empowered self tweeted to the Ed Camp Foundation people, "What's up with that?" So their answer was, "Tag, you're it." So I had to learn real fast this language, this lexicon that I've been learning all these years in InnoChat. Wow. You know, innovation wasn't a word that came trippingly off my tongue as a teacher. But I learned it, and this vocabulary about strategy, I didn't know what all those terms were, but I learned it. And so in the course of being connected in this global conversation, I was learning from people like you, and people like you, and even people like you, what it meant to be a professional, what it meant to be an edupreneur. And so I met 5 other wonderful professional ladies who helped us pull together the very first Ed Camp Atlanta in 2012, and I'm pleased to tell you that we just hosted our second one in 2013, and we have a offshoot spanning from that, and that's going to be Ed Camp Savannah, which will launch in February of next year. And I'm super excited about that, because now there are hundreds of educators, people that are connected, that are learning in a way that is virtually breaking down silos of thought. We are now in a place where we can collaborate virtually, and this is a huge shift in thinking, at least in education world. because we've operated in silos for so long, in independent schools, in charter schools, in public schools. Often there's little collaboration in the school building. Rarely is there collaboration across schools. Yet this was a new shift. This was a new way of thinking, and it's hugely important because collaboration is a key skill that your child is going to need. 21st century learning is all about critical thinking. It's about collaboration. It's about teaching children how to be innovators, how to be entrepreneurial, because they will need that. Your children are going to grow up in a world where they are going to need to co-create what their existence is after college. No longer are we in a situation where you graduate college and a job is guaranteed you. We, as teachers, have to teach children what that co-creation looks like. And the profession is changing. Teaching is expected to grow by as much as 17% by the year 2020. So this collaboration skill, this ability to connect to people like you, that's important. But frankly, it's a little intimidating. You're a little scary to us. You know words and terms that we don't know. You're so smart in your field. We need you to reach out to us. The next generation of teachers, they're going to be millennials. And Harvard research suggests that their perception of themselves is already that they are professionals. In fact, in a study about teacher self-perception, research says that teachers who are entering the teaching profession now see that profession is comparable to being a doctor and being a lawyer. And rightly so. Rightly so. Because they are training up the next generation of leaders. So, my call to action for you, now that you know that you are just a teeny little bit intimidating as business leaders to those of us that are in the teaching profession, but that we are eager for you to talk to us in nerdy terms that we don't know yet because we want to understand them. We want to connect with you, and we want to co-create solutions for educational reform with you. You have a unique opportunity as business leaders and parents because never before in the history of our country or the world have you been in a situation where you have more than the parent-teacher conference as a platform to connect you with your child's classroom teacher. I want that to sink in for a minute. Because educational reform is a big onion to peel, my friends. And it won't be one solution. Every community is entirely different. Every school is entirely different. It'll be a multitude of solutions, but I will guarantee you that it will happen at the grassroots level, one classroom at a time, one student at a time, one teacher at a time, and I hope one business leader at a time. So, you didn't think you were going to get out of here without some homework, right? Just checking. What I'd like for you to do is I'd like you to go back to the question at the beginning of this talk. I want you to close your eyes again. I want you to pause, and I want you to think about the language that you use to describe a teacher. In a minute, we're all going to tweet some descriptive words about what we think a teacher is. And I'd like us to use the hashtag because it wouldn't hurt while we're up here at the Buckhead Theater for us all to trend for just like 30 microseconds, right? But that way we can kind of track off the hashtag too what your responses are. Because I'm really interested in how you perceive me, how you perceive my teachers at my school, how you perceive the teaching profession. I really want to know. So, if you will tweet, ready, set, go. You there? You got it? You got your 140 characters? Educational reform is happening all around us, my friends, and we have big problems to solve in this city and around the nation, but I'm here to issue the challenge to you to reimagine teachers, connect with us, help us co-create those solutions for this city, for the nation, for your child. Thank you.
Thank you.